She's got her.
Oh, excellent. Okay, well, we'll start with her right off the top of the show. And good morning, chat room. And Johnny's with us today.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Things are going to start happening to me now.
Live exclusively for WCPT AM and FM in Chicago and streaming worldwide at chicagosprogressivetalk.com. Standing up and speaking out, here's Hal Sparks.
All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
Welcome to the show, everybody. Right off the top, we're going to go straight to the Keeping Families Together rally in Chicago. It is one of, I think, over 600. Hey, good morning, Johnny. Over 600 that are going on all over the country. It's an incredibly important movement. We will discuss it after this short interview because Carrie, our Cub reporter, WCPT's Cub reporter, is on the scene talking to one of the organizers of the rally and the march. Good morning, Carrie. Tell us what's going on and introduce your guest.
Hey, Hal.
Hi, go ahead.
Hey, Hal. So I'm out here at the Families Belong Together rally at the Daly Center, and I'm out here with civil rights attorney and main organizer of the rally, Marnie Willinson. Marnie, thank you for talking to us on air today. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about how you came to organize this and how long it took?
So I'm so pumped to see thousands of people out here today in Daly Plaza, and the Chicago Resistors came out in force. We started as 8 people on June 14th, which was a National Day of Action for Families Belong Together. And there was no protest in Chicago. 8 of us thought there might be a protest at the ICE building downtown, and we went downtown, and there was no protest other than the 8 of us. So we refused to accept that in a city of millions of people, that there weren't others like us, furious and horrified by what was happening at our southern border and the white nationalism and rising racism in this country. So I went back to my office at noon on June 14th and put up a Facebook event, and it mushroomed from there. We're thousands of people today. A huge coalition of organizations and individual sponsors came in to make this a reality.
Yeah, I mean, this is very crowded. In a short amount of time, you've got people out here. As a civil rights attorney and as an American, what are you hoping that you can gain from this rally? Are you hoping more to get the message out and drive more action?
Both of those things. I mean, I feel like we need mass mobilization. We being progressives represented in the Democratic Party, we don't have power in Congress, and we don't have the White House. So the only thing we can do is take to the streets, put our bodies on the line if necessary, vote in November, and get rid of the Republican Congress. They have demonstrated, the Republican Party has demonstrated that it is the party of white nationalism. They can make comments about how they don't agree with some of these policies, but they are all talk and no action. They have completely acquiesced to what's going on. We have to get rid of them. And I think it's going to be a blue wave in November, and part of what we're doing here today is to mobilize people. We're registering voters, and I believe that all these thousands of people that are here today will go out and vote in November and make a huge difference.
Oh, I do think this will make a huge difference. And those are great messages. I mean, just voting is so important. At the rally today, who are some of the speakers or performers? Tell us about some of the things that are going on here at the rally today.
So we have several impacted family members here local to Chicago. We have the mother of a young woman who's 21, who's been detained at the border for 2 years. We have an attorney that's traveled down to the border, I believe 7 times, and is going to describe the conditions that she's seen in the border and the detention of refugee families. We have a speaker to talk about the Muslim ban. We have the executive director of ACLU Illinois. They have been critically involved in litigation that's been brought related to the immigration policies and the Muslim ban. Those are some of the speakers. We have Indivisible, which has been essential to doing the logistics and actually making this rally happen. We'll talk about voter registration and other action steps that people can take. And then we'll have a number of local grassroots activists who work in the immigrant justice space here to talk about how these policies are not just happening at the border. that there are immigration policies that are impacting people here in Chicago that we all need to be aware of and resist.
We do. Thank you so much for speaking with us, Marnie. You've done such a good job organizing this. There are thousands of people out here today, and we're going to be out here until 1:30. So if anybody wants to come out and support the Families Belong Together movement, we're out here at the Daly Center until 1:30. Back to you, Hal.
Oh, thank you so much, Carrie. Thanks for bringing that to us. It's always that the stories of these rallies and these movements always seem to be the same these days, and I think that it is probably the single brightest ray of hope in the current political and social climate in the country is that movements like these of people who really care, who are trying to make a difference, who are, on an activist level, frustrated by what they're seeing in politics currently, simply get up off their couch and start doing something. And just in that action in and of itself, the groundswell, there is a huge crowd of people who are, it seems they are waiting for someone to mobilize them. And it only takes a little bit. It only takes that first few steps. So if anybody's listening to her story specifically and you're thinking, I need to be involved in this, or I see an issue or a political point that needs to be made that I think, or there is a crime being committed that is not being dealt with or is being caused by this administration, get up and do something about it. And the best thing that she brought up is you have to vote. You have to be registered to vote. Everybody you know has to be registered to vote. They have to go take someone with you to vote. I know I'm getting in a little bit of hot water and I'm treading on some nerves, and I kind of don't care. Is that yesterday in this frustration over the Kennedy retirement and what was going on, I kind of brought up the point that if people often talk about privilege and white privilege and class privilege and all that, and I believe personally that there is no greater act of privilege than a protest vote. There are countries in this world where people cannot vote. There are countries in this world where they have a vote, but it is a complete sham. There are votes where people are forced to vote and stuff ballot boxes at gunpoint. There are countries that are by the way, one of them is about to have a summit with our president where a sham election is
handpick the competition.
Yeah, right, where you handpick who you're running against, and anybody who might give you a real run for your money gets, green chemicals sprayed in their face.
I don't think I could be a
jail.
dictator because I'm sure I would pick the wrong person. Somebody would accidentally beat me. I'd be like,
I had to pick somebody
I thought
charming.
I had this one.
Yeah, well, you'd be such an egomaniac. And I think that par for the course that you have to be an egomaniac to be a dictator in the first place. So, but they've got to have a certain level of honesty with themselves. This is where Trump will fail ultimately. Luckily. Unfortunately, after he has packed the courts for the next 30 years, is that he actually he smokes his own supply. He believes his own press. And so he would run somebody, if he could set up his opposition, he would run someone against himself that could actually win because he thinks he's more charming and interesting than other people. But either way, there is the motivation to do this. And secondarily, you have to vote. I understand people's frustrations with the Democratic Party. I also believe that you can't turn a train into an off-road vehicle and expect it yourself to get anywhere. And that's how politics works in this country. And this idea that we must war against certain Dems in red districts or whatever because they need to be replaced with progressives. If they can be, awesome. If it means they'll lose their seat, it's not worth doing until we have a supermajority. It just isn't. And that person's value, whoever would run against them, could serve better in another office where there is an opening. I think it requires more strategy than just burning our own. And the Ocasio-Cortez win in New York is terrific, and I was very excited about it, as a lot of people were. This is a true grassroots progressive who won a seat from an entrenched incumbent Democrat. That's a great idea and a great concept.
Never had to that entrenched Democrat had never had to compete against another.
No, he
Democrat
never had to
in any
defend
kind
his
of
seat.
primary.
Yeah, that's right. And here's the thing: she was the perfect person to do it. Not only is she does she have great policies, she's telegenic, she's smart, and she went door to door. She beat him on all fronts. And when he lost, he played music at his rally and immediately endorsed her, as Democrats should do in these courses. He set a good example, and that's what you should do. And there's two big things to take away from this. On the one hand, one of the great reasons that she won, besides the fact that she was a great candidate and deserved it, was that she went door to door. I retweeted on my Twitter feed a picture of her shoes that she wore holes in, going door to door for 2 years, moving, trying to get this district and move herself up into it, which is what you should be doing. Unfortunately, the other side of it is that the turnout for the primary was incredibly low. And so to be excited about a progressive wave in a circumstance like that is not very reassuring. It means that the Democratic base that had kept Crowley in office for a long time hadn't shown up per se, that it was an activist race, hard Crowley supporters against Dem activists in a shrinking primary. That's not a good sign in that regard. I'm glad she's in. That's terrific. But it meant that low turnout is the part that concerns me the most. And I think it's one of the lessons we have to take away from all this is that, and again, this is something I tweeted the day before yesterday, but I'm proud of everybody for going out and marching today. I'm excited about it. I'm excited about all the marches we've had this year. But you can march a dozen times this year. You can get arrested in every city in this country in a sit-in. But unless you vote, you're part of the problem. We got to take a break. When we come back, we're going to discuss the fallout from this week's politics and what happens when we have low voter turnout and how that is the single desire of the Republican Party. The one thing that's most important to them is that Democrats don't vote. And if they can demoralize you out of it, they will. And if they can't, they'll deny you the ability. We're going to talk about that when we come back. It's the single most important part of this year, and the Kennedy retirement proves it. We'll be back. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. So, hey, chat room. Let me scroll back through. And thank you, Sandra, right out of the gate for that. She's going to the Families Belong Together at 10. That's awesome, Sandra. The one here, I think we're going to go to right after the show. And thank you, Hal Vickery, for the contribution. And let's see, did I miss somebody? Hold on, who's that? Oh, and sixes. Thank you so much for the super chats this morning. Really appreciate it. That primary. And good morning, Carl. How are you? How that Constitution needs a lot of fixing. It was not written for the little people. And I used to have a bit about the term "little people," and I think it was written for the little people, and I think it was written written as a seed, not the tree itself. And that's the thing we have to keep in mind. Susan Sarandon showed up at the sit at the Hart Senate office building and got arrested, and they blasted all over social media, and that pissed me off, Carrie. Yeah, I mean, she of all people, I mean, she gloated that Trump's win would be a progressive victory, and even Sanders saying that in many ways we won the election because Medicare for All was added to the Democratic platform. Of course, he didn't stay a Democrat. Don't get me started. Oof. Ivanka conned Kennedy. I don't know that he needed any conning. I think there's a lot of we'll talk about that. There's a bunch of stuff worth discussing on that note. Yeah. So hold on. I'm going to pull up the stories that I'm referencing.
30 seconds.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Look at us with our live remote actually working.
I know. I'm so happy.
I know.
Just don't know.
If we can take calls today, my head's going to explode.
Oh my God, me too.
Yeah. If you guys don't understand the chat room, they did maintenance on some of the gear at the station, and Lady B was just literally standing there with her arms crossed as it happened, making sure it worked. Bless her.
Program Mega Worldwide on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT.
Welcome back. So there's over 600 of these marches happening for the Families Belong Together rallies. The unfortunate part, I think, of these rallies is the title, which was sort of created when they were when the rally started getting put together. The children were being separated, and by the way, still are. Let's not forget. And so it is still a valuable name. But the Trump administration has modified its policy through that, and I hate calling it zero tolerance is ridiculous. It's racist.
It's from the X-Men movies.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing.
He has borrowed a lot of their dialogue. There's some people from Crooked Media who had a quiz that said, is this from the X-Men movie or is it from Zero Tolerance?
Right.
The term Zero Tolerance is about mutants.
Right. Oh, no question. Yeah. I mean, I have no doubt that that's a Stephen Miller edition, because that's what you have to understand. Stephen Miller is the main remaining advisor in the Trump White House defining policy right now. Stephen Miller is far.
He's a looker.
Oh my God, far to the right of Steve Bannon, and just wrap your head around that for a second.
Steve Bannon's Machiavellian, and Steve Miller thinks this stuff is awesome.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Steve Bannon thinks, well, you throw your base a bone by seeming cruel and stuff, and then you lower it and you bring it back, and you use one thing against another, and you manipulate the electorate.
Pretend you never said it.
And then at the end, you get hailed a hero by doing a couple of good guy things. There's still remnants of that, by the way, that are going on in the Trump White House. They still use that playbook sometimes. But Stephen Miller actually relishes these behaviors. Steve Miller relishes what happens to these families. He's enjoying it. And people in the White House, it's been reported in the New York Times and in the Washington Post that people within the White House are disgusted by his behavior. And he laughs to himself when he reads the stories about family separations. Then you got Corey Lewandowski doing the wonk wonk on during an interview about a child with Down syndrome being separated from her mother. These are the people that Donald Trump surrounds himself with because they get along. Because when conversation breaks out, these are the people who will say the words and articulate the thoughts that make him feel comfortable. Just understand that, and know that there is no, my head is frying right now because there's so much going on or whatever. The Kennedy retirement, it draws attention to the fact, in many ways, that elections have consequences, that it matters, and the difficult thing I think for people to grasp is that Kennedy, being the swing vote, was always a conservative. He was the replacement for Robert Bork. He was a the mitigatory guy, but he was a conservative on the court. He just he would vacillate on conservative law almost as an academic exercise. less than he cared ideologically about how things broke down. He would just go, well, the letter of the law says this, so I'll let this one slide. But most of the time, he was a poison pill on a bunch of fronts, and he may have been the swing vote on some important progressive moments, but it was largely because the people who were presenting the legal fight had a better argument, because the Constitution does provide for equal protection and things like that. They simply did. Yep. That there is no conservative legal.
It really was the law.
That's right. There is no conservative legal argument against gay marriage that actually holds up to constitutional muster. There isn't, because it's based on religious discrimination. How the conservatives do it is based entirely on religious discrimination. So it's ultimately an easy court case. There was a huge fight about it, but largely because of entrenched people that had been put in by previous conservative administrations just to gum up the works all the way up to the Supreme Court. But now they've decided to pack the Supreme Court. Now, keep in mind, Trump even said this week. The only reason there are 9 and not 12 justices is because we've kind of just gotten used to it. There is nothing that says that if Trump gets this guy in, he won't say, we should have, it should be 5-5. They should be able to have, 10 people on there so there's at least an even decision-making. So I'm gonna put 2 people on the Supreme Court, or 3, or 4 people. Because he absolutely can. The only reason they haven't is, and the maddening idea that Democrats came forward this week, and I know they have to say this language. I know they have to go out and at least say it in the press to drive this thing, is that there should be, the president should not be able to seat somebody in an election year, or he shouldn't be able to seat somebody while he's under indictment who may do him. Both of those things are true. Won't change a thing. There is no McConnell rule. McConnell doesn't have rules. He has tactics for the demolition of democracy. He doesn't have rules. There is no point where McConnell would say in 2019 or in 2020, like in the waning months of 2019 and 2020, if Trump decided he could add another person to the court, if there's no way McConnell would go, well, we're in a presidential year, so let's not pick one. They're not going to do that next time around. That was simply to stop Barack Obama getting someone on the court. It does not apply to them. There is no point where anything that Democrats say in that regard, in motivating them, there is no Bork rule right now. There is no creating moral outrage to motivate voters. There is no counting on Susan Collins in this circumstance. They are going to place someone on the court in the next 8 weeks. Just get used to the idea, and hold that.
He can put someone on the court who thinks that the president cannot be indicted, or the president can pardon himself.
Well, this idea that, he's not, they even asked him, are you going to pick somebody who will overturn Roe v. Wade? And he's like, well, they tell you, don't ask that question. That's not, so I won't ask him. I'm not,
because he said that. He said it during the campaign.
Right, but the reason he's saying that now is because he doesn't have to ask them the question. The Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society have already done it. They've created a workaround for conservative judges, because if any of these go and sit before the president and he says, "Do you think I can be indicted?" and they say, "No, I don't think so," and he nominates them during their hearing, Cory Booker or somebody else, Kamala Harris, somebody will say, did the president ask you if the president can be indicted? And what was your answer? And that will be the killer on it. And so he's not going to ask him. The Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society and the conservatives that vetted this list have already done it. They've already answered. They wouldn't make the list if they weren't against Roe v. Wade. They won't make the list if they're not going to overturn Roe v. Wade. Understand that. Anybody he promotes is from that list. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. Whoo, boy, I'm pissed. We'll be back right after. It's the House Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. Johnny Million's going to have to jump in more than usual with silliness and distraction because I might
I've got
burst.
it on hand.
I might burst into flames because you protest voters.
Because Trump.
You protest voters. You swung Michigan. The margin of Jill Stein voters in Michigan and protest voters was enough to turn the Electoral College just for Michigan alone. The same thing applied in Wisconsin and two of the other states. I'm not buying it. You guys got to go. You got to go. Or you got to be just ashamed of yourself. We'll be back. Yeah, Carrie, I saw the thing about Stuttering John getting a visit from the Secret Service. That ultimately, that's to be expected. They're not going to arrest him. They can't do it. And even if they do, like, it was satire. He shouldn't have even gotten through. I mean, literally, you could say that was an investigative journalist act, to see if you can get in firsthand. Like, yeah. There's a bunch of people, posting from the marches as well. The audio's quiet for you guys? It might be you, because I think I have a fairly strong signal. I guess I can... maybe turn it up. I try to keep the buzz low on this thing.
$25 seconds.
Excellent.
Now back to the House Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
So when the story came out this week that Justice Anthony Kennedy, the swing vote on a bunch of issues, was stepping down, was retiring at the end of July, which is, if you're looking for a perfect point to light a fuse on a powder keg that will go off this fall, July 31st is kind of the perfect time to do it. The absurdity that right before this election, literally it appears that Anthony Kennedy, in collusion with Donald Trump, is attempting to drive up the Republican base before the midterms. That he singularly decided that this would be the time to do it because the one motivating factor that drives the Republicans to the voting booth is the courts.
The courts.
Because the courts over the years, because of that darn Constitution, have continually sided with equal protection. There are lots of areas where, for this week, for example, where the conservatives on the court, because they have a leg up, will narrowly interpret it to use almost the same arguments used to protect gay marriage to stop unions, for public sector unions from collecting dues from non-members, that kind of idea. And they've realized, I think a long time ago, that it doesn't matter. Anytime you're dealing with business or anything you're going to expend a lot of your effort on, you look at the ROI. What's the return on investment, right? If I'm going to put effort in, if I'm going to pour money into something, what's the best use of my time and money? This is if you're a completely transactional human being, which is who we have running the White House right now and most of Congress and the Senate. You operate out of an entirely transactional way. That what will I get back from this for my effort out, and what will return to me? And if it doesn't return to me on a twofold, fivefold, or tenfold factor, I'm kind of not interested, right? A House candidate has to run every 2 years, and the cost of running one of them versus what you can actually get out of them is prohibitive unless you can gerrymander the districts so you get big swaths of them. So the money that would go into the House, insofar as donors go and big PACs and motivating groups, all of those dollars go into the gerrymandering process. So what they do is, instead of pouring money into a ton of Republicans, instead of pouring money into a bunch of congressional seats, what they went after were secretaries of state. They spent a lot of time on governors and secretaries of state and basically affecting voting rights within the states and then gerrymandering the districts. This was how they would guarantee large chunks of Republicans representing more land than human beings, but getting in office, so that they had a controlling faction in there. That's how you spend your money on House races if you want to control the House, if you want to dictate what gets to the floor, because it does not matter how passionate any individual member of Congress is if their bill, their idea, their amendment doesn't reach the floor. And so what you must control, and this is how the Republicans have been governing since Reagan, this is the plan they've been operating on, is that you guarantee yourself the most volume in Congress. Then when it comes to the next best bang for your buck expenditure, the best drop for the Koch brothers' money, ultimately, is the Senate. Because the Senate is a double hit. While the president has to change every 4 years, the Senate's got a 6-year term. So you're really, that's a long-term investment. That's a long yield bond on your BS. And if you can turn the Senate conservative and you can hold on to it even by that 1 or 2 vote margin, it's worth every penny, because they are the defining factor in the Supreme Court. So those two elements, they can stop the Merrick Garlands of the world, and they can put in Justice Jeanine Pirro if they want to. And so all the spending that gets done is is aimed at the Senate, which is why you could have, arguably, Trump and people like Bernie Sanders running on this idea that you can, you don't need big donors, you don't need all that money, because it's an ideological push for whoever you are. It's an anti-establishment push, and the Senate and its handlers know that they can blockade anybody that they don't want, and they can funnel through because they don't need a supermajority. They don't need 60 votes, which is maddening to me, considering it's a lifetime spot on the bench. That you don't need, you should. There are so many bills and budgetary elements that we need 60 votes for, and that happens every year. But a Supreme Court justice, you need 51 in this case. And the idea that Susan Collins or any of these people are going to push back against whoever he pushed forward. And I got news for you guys, that who he puts forward will be either a religious conservative woman, and he will use that going into the election cycle to go, look, I put a woman on the, or, she'll be, emotionally Ann Coulter and politically a CBN host, but she'll be female, and that will be enough for them to, the right wing will argue that. They'll use it as their, it's really the left that has the war on women. They won't let anybody in. They didn't like it when Bush tried to put his personal attorney. She was a woman. They're against women, right? And it won't matter. The rest of us will know it's crap and it's a hypocritical argument, but it'll work with his base. And that woman that he puts in there, or that religious conservative male that he puts on there, will sit before their, during their hearings, and they will say, would you ever, there's 2 women on his list, by the way, people in the chat room who are questioning, a woman? Yeah, he's got 2 on his list, on the short list apparently, that are women, but both of them are, might as well be Ann Coulter or Sarah Palin. And this idea that they're going to have a religious conservative woman on the court who will use that position to guarantee that Roe v. Wade gets overturned, because she'll be the female voice against Roe v. Wade, and ultimately the majority will rest on his or her decision. And then the male that he puts forward, when and if he does that, only has to be 6 inches to the right of Justice Kennedy. That's it. He just needs somebody. He could put somebody in who, by all measure, seems to be just another Kennedy. But all he has to be is mildly to the right on decisions, and that's the vanishing swing vote. I mean, there is and this idea that somehow people are holding out hope that the Democrats will be able to do anything to stop this other than parliamentary tricks, which they very well may do, and I hope that they do. That is my only hope for any kind of possibility in this circumstance, is that there are, strategic things, about holding things on the floors, filibuster-like activities. I don't bet on it. But that's the only thing they have. And everybody who's saying that, the Democrats have to, create a sense of moral outrage, or that they'll push any Republicans currently who are all less popular with the base and their own voters than Donald Trump is, that somehow actual morality, an argument that what they're doing is wrong, will actually change anyone like Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins.
It's amazing that it doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
They can go to sleep at night.
Yeah, because they're going to get reelected.
Bleeding heart is a bad thing.
Right.
Caring is a bad thing. That's an insult to them.
Mm-hmm. And so people, Democrats, progressives, liberals, I'm here to tell you that whoever Trump puts forward, they might get one down, but they're going to get a second one. And that person will get on, and it will happen before the election. And the only hope that we have in any stretch is that the Senate and the House both turn Democrat with such a mandate that if Donald Trump attempts to escape pardon from his actions, if he believes he can pardon himself, and he is able to do that because of the Supreme Court he himself stacked, that the person who did the deciding vote on that will actually get impeached because they sided with a man who was found guilty of crimes, pardoned himself, and they were part of it. Carrie in our chat room said Democratic senators have to get a spine, all of them. They can have all the spine they want. It's not going to change this vote. It just isn't.
There's only 49 of them.
Yep, there's only 49 of them. And it's up to us as voters. If people want a third party, if they want, the Greens to have a chance, you know what you need? You need a 70 vote Dem majority to pull that off. And then you start tearing away at the right-wing non-religious libertarians who just want clean drinking water and are fine with the Green Party's overall idea, and some Dems who are, fed up and in a safe district. But this whole we got a 51-49 margin. Well, we can afford to blow it this time. Yeah, the prof in our chat room said Franken had a spine and we broke his back. Wow. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll be back. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, 773-763-9278. We'll be right back. Hi, I'm back. Okay. Hi, chat room. I'll get one of these. Hi. I'm sick of the mansplaining about Franken, even among some women. Wait, women can mansplain now? Okay. Obama warned us, told us the work that lay ahead, that it wouldn't come easy, and we just threw a tantrum. Yep, that's exactly right, Ginger. It's embarrassing. Do they suck up atheists in the rapture too? If not, I'm safe. Atheists get decimated. Your skin boils, but you stay alive all during the tribulation, and then your soul goes nowhere. But it never ceases to exist. It just stays in sort of a burning limbo. JJ, I've not read Malcolm's book. I just bought it though. I just all the stuff that's been going on. I've been doing all this secondary reading all over the place.
20 seconds.
Excellent. Oh, Billy, we might be able to argue that this is the tribulation. Sure. Chicago got so hot, July railroad tracks.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
Welcome back to the show. So Johnny, did you by any chance know that Justice Kennedy's son is friends with the Trump kids?
That blew my mind.
That I follow Scott Dworkin on Twitter, and he's on this stuff, man, sometimes. And the reality, like, do you remember, like, Edward Snowden said right before the election that this election is between Donald Trump and Goldman Sachs. Like, he came down soundly on the side of, if you don't want Goldman Sachs in the White House, you have to elect Donald Trump. Edward,
amazing that they sold that and people bought it.
Edward Snowden, people, and
he's a hero.
Never mind the fact that Mnuchin and all basically everyone economically in there is either tied to Goldman Sachs or the friggin' Bank of Cyprus, or has active financial,
like Deutsche Bank.
Yeah, active multi-billion-dollar deals with foreign banks, that are direct.
Freedom!
Oh my God! So, Justice Kennedy's son, Justin Kennedy, was a
See what he did there?
Yeah, worked at Goldman Sachs, then he was Trump and the Trump kids' favorite, I guess, bank teller at Deutsche Bank, where the majority of Trump's debt was. Where, and I saw Stephanie Rule talk about this, and she does have a point that Justin was not directly working at the arm of the bank that loaned him the money, but the idea that they're not, since he was in the real estate department and the loans came from another department, it's like, go to your bank and ask them to transfer you to another department. They know the person. They know that person.
Yep.
And that person is, especially at Deutsche Bank, is knee deep in drug and gun and oligarch siphoned money from Russia. And so the idea that somehow, he works there for 12 years. Trump can't get any money from American banks or European banks, and all of a sudden Deutsche Bank gives him $1 billion in credit.
$1 billion.
And again, Donald Trump is not rich. Donald Trump is a debt snake. Understand this, that if you want to talk about the greatest privileges of being rich people, and this applies to rich people in a lot of different countries, the controlling groups in Africa, in China, in India, in Europe, certainly in the United States, in Mexico, South America, there is a class of human being that once they reach a certain wealth factor, and most of them are generational wealth, there are very few, except in the United States and some parts of Europe, there are some new people in that crowd, but most of them are 4 generations back, right? Money has run in the family, and what happens is after the primary, person makes money in that family, the kids live off a cycle of debt and repayment. Or using the wealth of the great, the grandparent, the great-grandparent at this point, the money they made as sort of a bank teller that they can leverage against other stuff. And Trump himself, this whole like, I only got $1 million for my dad, except that other $25 million, and then what was supposed to go to my brother later, and also help establishing my businesses and the priceless connections my father made for me in the real estate world, which is that's the thing you can't put a price tag on. And 6 is 100% inheritance tax will cure all that. See, I don't believe in that either. I think people should be able to build wealth and pass it on to their kids. But this idea that Trump is rich is an absurdity. And he's as our chat room points out, he's got 6%, or he's got 6 bankruptcies. He's at one point there was no money coming in, and the only place he could get it.
How many bankruptcies do you have, Hal?
0.
Oh yeah, same here.
0. Yeah, and not that I haven't been through periods.
You've been through a hardship or two.
Oh
I
yeah,
know you did some couch surfing.
Yeah. And during those times, I probably could have gotten rid of some debt by doing that, and I didn't, and it sucked.
It sucked.
Yeah.
Yes.
But these guys who can just like toilet paper their way through $1 million deals,
because they get the benefit of the doubt because of how they look.
That's right.
Know.
And also you got this throwing good money after bad habit that a lot of giant banks have. That's the thing. If these banks, if you're all in on somebody, if you're the bank, if you're Justin Kennedy and your department is in for $300 million with Donald Trump, and it looks like it's not coming back if his business fails, it is a better investment for you on a material level. And this isn't even the graft part. This is actually, at a certain point, a career-saving decision that actually might do the banks some better business to throw another $300 million at this person till they get on their feet and you can get 800 back. That genuinely is a decision that these people find themselves in. I mean, wrap your head around the fact that these people think this is a sensible decision sometimes, and they're not 100% wrong. That's the crazy part. That they're going, yeah, if this business collapses, we get none of our money back, so let's just throw more money at it or whatever. Meanwhile, by the way, these are the same people who think that feeding children, that school lunch programs are a waste of money. But throwing $300 million to salvage a wasted $300 million, and Carrie in our chat room was bringing up Romney, which is a great example. About Romney bankrupting companies. They do these hostile takeovers. That's different because they take over their competition, saddle their competition buildings and stuff with debt, and then kill them off so that they remain the only brand on the market. That's a strategy that's existed for a long time, and it's a business model. It's not just a horrifying.
It's a feature, not a bug.
That's right. Yeah, it is the feature of Bain Capital. Bain Capital's almost entire mission is to gut companies from the inside and live off the carcass. And you can say that's horrible, but and it is. But basically, they're the maggots of the business world, and flies are a very successful species. There are, what is it? The body weight of the dead flies on Earth is more than the body weight of all the human beings who have ever lived. Currently,
I'm so glad something weighs more than me.
Well, sure they do. Whatever. You didn't come in a scooter yet. We still got you on. We'll get you. But
I'm basically mobile.
But so Justin Kennedy is the idea that Kennedy comes in, has a half-hour meeting with Trump, and then tells him he's going to retire at the end of July. And then we find out that Justin Kennedy is involved in real estate deals, and a very specific one with Jared Kushner, and I want to talk about that when we come back. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. We're talking to all you people who are either listening to us on your phone at one of the marches or will listen to us later on at houseparks.tv. Buffett is no better than the rest of these billionaires. Carrie, that's materially not true. Ditch cocaine Mitch, right. How can something like what Bain and other businesses do be considered legal? I would... Because buying a failing company, realizing it legally has no support structure from within, and finding out that your only economically feasible way of doing anything with your investment is to sell off the parts, I mean, it's legal, and it should be legal. It should be legal for you to buy a company if you can and invest in it, and then find out, oh crap, this thing's not working, so I'm going to have to sell off parts of it. Anytime you have the freedom to do that, then you have people who will use that freedom to create it, as a business model. It's the same thing. Hey, look, one of my favorite things that we could implement is a penny tax on stock transaction. Every if you weigh all the ants on Earth today, they would weigh more than all the humans on Earth. No brain, but ants do quite well. Yeah, right. Tom Steyer needs to spend his money buying a media company. That would help. I think he might be leading up to running for something. He may be our one of the outside runners. I like the guy, though, and I follow him, and I signed his need to impeach petition. I recommend you do it, too. But, yeah, anytime we're presented with a freedom, there's somebody who's going to act on that freedom, and you're going to have to close the loophole that allows them to act on that freedom. And then that will narrow that freedom, and some people will go, that keeps me from doing real business, and there'll be this pushback. That's the nature of governing. That's the nature of creating law. I mean, that's how we got from thou shalt not kill to manslaughter, murder 1, murder 2, depraved indifference, because there is a difference. And it's kind of important in those situations. Can't we just elect The Rock and he can fix everything? I don't know. Well, we're almost there. But they forced debt onto these companies. No, yeah. Toys R Us had a $500 million profit year, providing 33,000 jobs. Of course, his owner should have defended it better against killers like Mitt. Agreed. Well, that's the problem, too, is that, and then in the nature of our stock market, look at a company's stock going down when it's profitable, but it doesn't make as much money as analysts predicted. What the hell does that mean? Especially when the analysts can just make up the figure. So let's say you've got a buddy, you're an analyst, and this is where the essence of insider trading goes, and that dude who used to be on CNBC or whatever with the little crash button in his crazy show. What he used to do is basically you got some friends or you got some investments in a company and you want to buy more of it, or you've got stock in the people who might want to buy it, so you intentionally overvalue something. You talk it up, right? Yeah, Kramer, that's right. You talk it up, and then it doesn't pay off because it's a lie. And then when this other company comes in, and its stock takes a dip, this other company can come in and buy it because it was working below analysts' expectations, even when the analysts were lying about it. It's you can rig it that way. You absolutely can. And now with electronic trading, like wait for that crash. Holy smokes. And then the long-term index, the bond index. Let's see. Let me try to look that up. Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about this in a second. Yeah. Yeah, Harley Davidson and Carrier, right. They used to call it touting and it was illegal. Right. Bitcoin. I can't, like...
30 seconds.
Cool. The same people who talk about how the U.S. currency has no worth because it's just a fiat currency and it's not held up by a gold standard are all in on Bitcoin. It's absurd.
You're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at halsparks.com.
I don't care for you or for the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Damn puss-faced little pimp stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
Hey, so Johnny Million, I have a question for you, and this is pop quiz, hotshot. You know what the yield? You know what the yield curve is? You know,
is it when I can't get over to get off on Nagel when I'm getting here?
Yeah, when your car you just don't have the turn radius to get in.
Yeah,
behind.
people are trying to merge on and they won't yield.
Okay, so
I gotta make the curve.
That is so close. You're so close.
Okay. All right. Cool. Thanks, man.
Yeah, you're literally like a hair's breadth away. The yield curve is the difference between short-term bond interest rates and long-term ones. So interest rates on like 2-year or 5-year Treasury notes and long-term government bonds, like 10 and 20-year Treasury notes. Okay, so and there's an article in the New York Times which this is the difficulty of a Democratic win this fall. Okay. On the one hand, the only thing we have to protect ourselves from this president is Democrats taking over the House and the Senate. The downside is the Senate and the House are going to take over right as a recession is going to start kicking in. Yep. We're gonna have some form of recession right before the 2020 election. And Donald Trump is going to make a campaign point out of blaming Democrats for it because they're going to take over they slowed us down and they didn't let us do things. Luckily, his ego is such that, like, they slowed us down, but we still did everything we wanted. I still got everything, right. But they don't. I'm still great, right? So there's an article in the New York Times, and it's been coming up over the last week. Ali Velshi mentioned it, and Ali's a decent human being. He really is. He's worked in the economic sector for a long time. He knows a lot of Wall Street people, and so I know a lot of people are like, he's met a Wall Street person. He should be strung up. That whole idea. I don't believe these bankers. What time is the bank closed today? I got to go over there and put my money, my check in the bank. Right. I love people with an ATM card who hate bankers, or who aren't at a federal credit union, or if they are at a credit union, aren't pushing the credit union to be able to do business accounts. Anyways, so this article in the New York Times is really one of the things that stood out for me this week. It said, you can try to play down a trade war with China. You can brush off the impact of rising oil prices on corporate earnings. But if you're in the business of making economic predictions, it has become very difficult to disregard an important signal from the bond market. The so-called yield curve is perilously close to predicting a recession. And by the way, it passed this point since the article was written. The so-called yield curve is something that it has done before with surprising accuracy, and it's become a big topic on Wall Street. Terms like the yield curve can be mind-numbing if you're not a bond trader, but the mechanics, practical impact, and psychology of it are fairly straightforward. Here's what all the fuss is about. Typically, when an economy seems in good health, the rate on the longer-term bonds will be higher than the short-term ones. So a healthy economy, if you're going to get a 10-year bond, it'll have 3% on it, and the short-term bonds will have 1.5%, okay? Because you're going to turn it over quickly. So they're not going to invest a lot in whether or not you're going to be around to cash your checks and all that kind of stuff. You're just going to you want in and out of the whole system. But if you're going long-term, and if you're going to give the government your money in a bond hold for a long time, you want a slightly higher return on it, right? That makes sense. Like, I'm only going to put this in for a couple years. I want to get, I know I'll get less out of it. But if I'm going to let you sit on my money for a long time, I want an interest rate that's higher. That makes total sense. Okay. Right now, that's backwards. So, okay, I'll continue. The extra interest is to compensate in part for the risk that strong economic growth could set off a broad rise in prices known as inflation. Lately, through long-term bond yields have been stubbornly slow to rise, which suggests traders are concerned about long-term growth, even as the economy shows plenty of vitality. At the same time, the Federal Reserve, by the way, can I just say that if you listen to the ads on television and on the radio right now about mortgages, about, credit cards and credit availability, and you look at the articles about the economy, they're all nearly identical to 2006 and 2007. All the conversations that are currently happening are almost identical to the newspaper articles and the predictions that were coming out in 2006 and 2007. All the promises and all the concerns are almost identical. So, anyways, at the same time, the Federal Reserve has been raising short-term rates, so the yield curve has been flattening. In other words, the gap between short-term interest rates and long-term rates is shrinking. It flip-flopped this week. Economists and investors are watching the shrinking gap between interest rates on 2-year and 10-year U.S. government bonds, known in the bond market as a flattening yield curve. The gap between 2-year and 10-year Treasury notes is roughly 0.34 percentage points. Not 0.34 percentage points.
Pretty low.
Yeah. A 2-year investment versus a 10-year investment, and the difference between you investing in 10 years against the idea that inflation, cost of living is going to go up, and your long-term investment is only going to garner you 0.34 percentage points more than putting your money in until 2020. It was last at these levels in 2007, when the United States economy was heading into what was arguably the worst recession in almost 80 years. As scary as references to the financial crisis sound, flattening alone does not mean that the United States is doomed to slip into another recession. But if it keeps moving in this direction, eventually long-term interest rates will fall below short-term rates, which happened this week for a period. I don't know if it still is, but it was the last time I looked. When that happens, the yield curve has inverted. An inversion is seen as a powerful signal of recessions, as the president of New York Fed, John Williams, said this year, and that's what everyone is watching for. Here's the problem. Leading into 2008 and 2007, we had very little, but we had some. We still had some dry powder in terms of economic stimulus available. Mm-hmm. Thanks to Trump's adding $1 trillion to the deficit based on long-term growth, which according to the yield market isn't going to happen. There is nothing to shore up the economy with. If we hit 2020, there are no more tax breaks to give. There are no more. There's no financial incentive for producing bonds. This is rough. And because Trump is, the irony is, one of the only things that might help us, is that the reversal of Trump's tariff acts and his ridiculous trade wars with other countries might be our only economic stimulus possible. that the Democrats, once they get in, if the Democrats are in charge of the Senate and the House, they may be able to rescind those tariffs and end the trade war by passing a bill, which they currently cannot, to keep the economy from nosediving. Because by all measures, this is where we're marching towards. We got to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk. I got kind of caught up on that, but I want to talk about how deep in Justin Kennedy is with the Kushners. Because it's not something it's almost presented because he worked for Deutsche Bank for 12 years. It makes it sound like the story is 12 years old. It's the last 12 years. And short of, 2 years ago where he moved. Well, I'll tell you when we come back. It's mind-blowing. The Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk, now with 100% more Johnny Million, at J Million on Twitter. I'm at Hal Sparks on Twitter. Follow us, ask us questions, call in 773-763-9278. Scrolling through some stuff. Give me 1 second, folks. Mm-hmm. There we go. All right, cool. We get the king of bankruptcy and in office, and we're surprised we're headed towards another recession. Mm-hmm.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
So, Johnny, do you remember when we did our little telethon?
When I had to run in because I was just in the bathroom?
No. I always remember that. I'm just glad
no,
you.
Just happened. It's a red letter day.
We're all just happy.
I had to wash my hands.
You leave the room to do it now, and I think that's once we've got you trained. We're very proud of ourselves.
Never again.
It's a red letter day.
Hashtag never again.
Right. One of the interesting things. This is from, I guess, well, how even look? Okay, so we started. The 666 Fifth Avenue is one of the greatest examples of the if Obama, oh my God, what the hell, like HRC and Obama get, fake birth certificate, Pizzagate, all this kind of stuff. But literally, Trump's son-in-law can pay the most money ever paid for a piece of property in the United States to get 666 Fifth Avenue, and religious conservatives and the Pizzagate conspiracy theorists can't shrug it off. The guy literally paid the most money ever paid for a building in the United States, in the history of the United States, for 666 Fifth Avenue.
If this democracy makes it another 75 years, what are the history books going to look like?
My God.
Like, yeah, no, really, this happened. There'll be multiple choice questions where the real answer will seem fictitious.
So clearly, I mean, that's just amazing. That's just like, hilarious as it is sad. Because again, these are the people who, never stop making videos about Pizzagate. And meanwhile, the Trump administration has lost 1,400 children, is still separating 2,300 children from their parents, has decided, in this day of marches, keep families together, has decided they're going to do that, but in detention facilities. Okay.
Neato.
And by the way, Trump flew around on Jeffrey Epstein's plane too. I'm just saying, like he's quoted as Epstein, the pedophile, billionaire, and Trump was quoted as saying, yeah, he's got a lot of pretty women around him. Some of them are on the young side, but he likes it that way. Like
my God.
Yeah. He says that.
Some of them are on the young. I'm hitting my head against the microphone.
What the hell? Right. So he and again,
I want to swear.
I know it's so difficult. That's a lot of my ums are just F-bombs that I'm choking back. So, in this,
we do have a couple calls, by the way. Sorry.
Good. Okay. Well, we'll get to them in just 1 second because I want to deal with this for a second. So, if any of these things, if our side was, flat earther style Alex Jones crowd, into compartmentalizing all these little things and pulling out a Glenn Beck like chalkboard and tying them all together, you could absolutely concoct a conspiracy of pedophiles and billionaires and monstrous corporate raiders who roll in and burn companies to the ground with no regard for the people that are working there or their families or anything, like destroying communities. And so the idea that they just kind of walk is absurd. Okay, so then we find out, there's this big story about, the bill is going to come due, right, next January, on 666 Fifth Avenue, that they're leveraged out the whiz-wang trying to, to pay for this, And so I want to get the company name of this right, but this is an article, let's see, April 9th, 2018. Commercial real estate finance industry veterans Justin Kennedy and Toby Cobb and Jonathan Roth have founded 5650 REIT, a commercial real estate portfolio lender. REIT's investment products include long-term first lien mortgages on stabilized properties, 5 to 10-year fixed-rate bridge financing, including senior secured mezzanine and preferred equity, opportunistic investments and loan servicing, blah, 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 blah. They are partners with, and I think Kennedy himself is on the board of, I want to call it Zolcano Realty. And let me look up so I'm not talking out of school. But basically the company that bailed out Jared Kushner is linked to the company that Justin Kennedy is now a part of. That in and of itself, I mean... It's
unreal.
Yeah. There's so much of it. I mean, the reality of it is that this is the biggest act of graft in the history of the United States. That this is what happens. This is what happens when you don't regulate corporations and you allow the criminals themselves to write the rules. It doesn't take much. The wiggle room that these kind of people need to destroy stuff from the inside, because a lot of times rules are written by a combination of people who can't imagine doing something so horrible, and other people who are trying again and again and again to find some way to do something horrible. You know, these are the two plan points. What in the world? I don't know what that is. All right. Let's take some calls though, because I want to be able to do that.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. Who do we have?
Oh. We have to go to line 3 right now.
Oh.
Stat.
Okay. Hello. Who's there? Who do we have?
Jim.
Yes.
Hey,
Talk
Jim.
to us.
Go ahead. How are you?
Hello?
Yes. Go ahead. Hey,
Can you
Jim.
hear us?
Yes.
You're on. Hit it.
Hey, you guys, how's it going?
Great.
Hey, I really enjoy your show. There's a subject matter that maybe a lot of people on progressive talk radio doesn't talk about, but it does involve the government, and it's all about the fact that we have been visited by extraterrestrials, and I'm not kidding, for over 70 years, and the government on the dole has been covering this up. People have come out, and especially military folks, talking about this subject and that it's real. In fact, recently, of course, you may have read the New York Times article about the Nimitz carrier group and their encounter with the UFO. I'm wondering, I know Hillary had been asked about the subject, and she was open to disclosure, but I'm wondering, what do you guys think about it?
It's perfect, I think, for the time, Johnny. I think that's one of those discussions that I don't mind having on a sort of a personal level. But I also think that, let's say that there are aliens who are visiting us, or aliens who are observing the human, trying to decide whether or not to blow our planet out of the solar system because we are a danger to the rest of the universe. I think it behooves
You're welcome,
us.
by the way.
Huh? Oh yeah, I know.
You're welcome,
thanks.
by the way.
The reality is, I think it behooves us to behave in the most humane way possible. The most,
right,
as Captain Kirk would say, the most human. And in reality, here's the thing. Okay, so one of the favorite, this is a good kind of point. One of the favorite sticking points of conspiracy theorists, especially, is the all-seeing eye of Providence, right? The one that's at the top of the dollar bill pyramid and all that kind of stuff. Okay, the all-seeing eye of Providence literally is that luck looks well upon you when you behave as if God is always watching. That's what the eye of Providence is doing. The eye of Providence is going, hey, behave yourself, and life will go your way. And don't mistreat people. Don't act like a monster. Because
remember, that's the only way to have good behavior is to be worried that somebody's
watching you. Well, you have to understand though, this is a symbol from before we had Big Brother, right? So churches, communities, groups, the Egyptians, the Celts, everybody. There was this idea that you know what? If we just let people kind of do whatever they're going to do, a good portion of them are going to go straight Donald Trump, Jared Kushner, if they don't think they've got something going on with this. So this idea that this eye of Providence is always watching you was kind of a warning to people. Like, you don't know everything. And let's just say someone is keeping track of what you're doing on a spiritual level, on a moral level. It would behoove you to behave in a moral way, right? That's what the Eye of Providence, that's why the Founding Fathers liked that symbol. It's why they used it so often. It's not because, it's not an Illuminati symbol. It's literally there for that purpose. It was.
What about all those Kesha videos?
Yeah, good point. Touche. But here's the thing: if it helps you to believe that if you believe aliens are watching us to try and decide whether or not we're keepers as a species, I'd say so, maybe start acting like it. That would be enough. If you don't believe in them, how about vote anyways? How about be a decent person anyways? How about that? That would be my argument. Because again, the idea is, and by the way, the Nimitz UFO thing is 100% true. But let's the purpose though of all these things is any kind of conspiracy element. This is okay. We got to take a break. But when we come back, I want to tell you why it's important to have heroes. It's super important, and I think people are afraid to these days. And I want to remind you why it's important. We'll be back. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Yeah. USS Nimitz UFO incident. Wikipedia. I just know the Nimitz because that's the ship that was going to blow up the ship that Steven Seagal and Gary Busey were on in Under Siege. Thanks, EO. I lost interest in Lost in Space. They're trapped on the same planet, and just every time they turned around, it was another. They were trying to out-Martian the Martian. I did see Hannah Gadsby's Netflix special. I'm not a fan. I mean, I appreciate what she's doing. I just don't think it's comedy. I think it's a one-man show, or one-woman show, one-person show. However you want to put it. How'd you say you were going to walk after the... Well, I have an after show. Yeah, I will for about a half hour, Brad. There'll be a post show. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, it was more like a long
15 seconds.
Okay. Yeah, it was more like a long TED Talk. And I think TED Talks are a problem. I'm going to do one about how TED Talks are a problem.
I'm Dick Kay from Back on the Beat, and here is the mega worldwide radio program with Hal Sparks.
I love that.
Yeah, me too.
You're going to do a TED Talk about how TED Talks are a problem?
Yeah, I'm literally. I talked to my agent last week because I got asked about doing maybe a TEDx talk, and they're like, "What would you do it on?" And I was like, "I would do it that I think TED Talks are dangerous." Can I do one on that I think TED Talks are the problem? Because if a little learning is a dangerous thing, TED Talks are grenades in the hands of children. Yep. They are people walk away feeling like they know a bunch, and
everything I needed to learn, I learned from one TED Talk once.
Right, exactly. And they don't really deep dive into the concept, and a lot of it is based on that concept of a new study. Like we just did a study that found out, 10 other studies have disproved it. There's a reason why the scientific method needs multiple studies before you say, "Oh, we see a trend in the studies," and then that's how we actually develop a long-term strategy in terms of whether or not something is a viable scientific or psychological theory. But people can't wait to jump on. So, anyways. That's just my, it's a pet peeve. It's on the same level as me hating Jurassic World. It's not the hill to die on, but I think it's funny and I think they're both ridiculous. How about that? I think TED Talks are to intellectualism what Jurassic Park is.
The opposite of love is not hate. It's Jurassic World, but you have a passionate hatred.
Oh my God! Don't both of them. And the first one, it was even dumber. Okay, that'll be part of the post show.
I tried to make it through that one.
You can't. Right. The idea that people they've had this.
Lady B likes him, but she's a little upset.
Oh my God!
Right now. She just hit herself in the face.
This idea that you have an island full of dinosaurs and people are now so bored with it, that people still go to zoos. But Jurassic World is so boring. You have to create a mega dinosaur. You put it in a pen with a dinosaur-sized door on it. You give it the ability. You don't know until it's an adult that it can camouflage itself, and then it chews out its tracker because you're so stupid. You put it just below the skin. You know it has problem. Don't even get. Please.
If you're giving me an elevator pitch for a new movie, I am buying.
Please. And then the new one, please.
That was the old one?
Yeah, that was the old one. The new one's got...
I guess I didn't watch it that far.
The new one, they've got... all I'm saying is there's a dinosaur auction. I'm not... Spoiler alert. There's a dinosaur auction in it with a bunch of rich people who all have foreign accents, by the way. They're all
Lady B's nodding enthusiastically.
All Greeks and Arabs, right? It's everybody
seen all of them.
Vaguely brown with a mustache. It's just creepy. With by the way, the German scientist from the Avengers series as the auctioneer who gets lawyer eaten by the evil Omniraptor or whatever, and they're selling dinosaurs at auction to weapons manufacturers to crazy, we sell Stinger missiles to rebel, death squads, those kind of people. And how much are they selling the dinosaurs for? $20 million. And the guy's excited that he's getting $20 to $26 million per dinosaur. It's the dumbest. Just make it 100. That's a script fix.
Low.
It's absurd. It's there's not a government on the planet that wouldn't just write you a check for $1 billion for all of them just to put them all down and kill you too. It's the stupid. Oh God, please. Jurassic World is the TED Talk of dinosaur movies. Ray Harryhausen put more thought into it.
Is Jeff Goldblum in this one, too?
Yeah. Oh, they bait you in. He's in the beginning and the end, and he's only got one scene. And he doesn't even walk around and make hand gestures. He's better in Thor Ragnarok. If you want Jeff Goldblum. Yeah.
I tell you what, I watched Pitch Perfect 3 last night, and it was delightful.
So, at what point did they release the Kraken? Is there a dinosaur in that one? I don't know how it's related.
There is the beginning of the third act.
Oh my God! So
when Rebel Wilson jumps out of a boat and lands in a rowboat instead of the water.
Carl said, "Don't diss Ray Harryhausen" in our chat room, and I am not. I'm making a very specific point that there is more thought and creativity and more effort that went into the Ray Harryhausen monsters and dinosaurs than anything even remotely close to Lady in Heels and guy trying to save a dino. Oh God.
Have you seen the Jurassic Park reboot where everybody's in high heels, including the dinosaurs?
Oh my God! It's just,
it looks amazing.
The whole thing's embarrassing. Like I sit there and I'm embarrassed for everyone involved. I'm not embarrassed for their paychecks, bless their heart, and I'd be in one in a heartbeat. Let's not kid ourselves.
Oh right.
In a second, I would,
like they may take it as a challenge now to get you in.
I won't do a fast food ad, but I'll be in a Jurassic World. I'll be in Jurassic World 3 playing the Michael Jeter part in a heartbeat. Rest his soul. What a great human being. But yeah, so there we go. All right, that's all I got. That's my rant on that. We needed, I think.
Do we have to go to break now?
No, we needed that was a pressure valve. We needed to kind of let the this. John Melendez, for those of you who don't know, Stuttering John from the Howard Stern Show, pranked the White House, and the lady who calls him back. There's audio of the woman from the White House switchboard who puts him through, whose job
Air
it
Force
is
One.
to call back and make sure that the phone number she was given is a real number for a real person. Sounds like from someone from the customer service desk at a aluminum siding company in Abilene, Texas. You know what I mean? Like, hi, we noticed you picked up one of our business cards at Chili's last week, and you are the winner of a dinner with the president. So if you just hold for 1 second, we're going to put you right through. And she calls him back and says, okay, yeah, I'll put you through to the president. And John Melendez finishes the call by saying Baba Booey.
Oh, my God.
Oh, he says Baba Booey to you. And that in and of itself, that is the Trump presidency.
Yep.
That and the fact that North Korea is boosting nuclear fuel production at secret sites, according to satellite photographs.
No.
Yeah. Let's be and again, the news comes that this was done in the last month. There is absolutely a hair's breadth chance that was all done before the meeting and the lead up, and that they have not done it since, but they certainly haven't gotten rid of any of it. And according to one U.S. official, there is no evidence that they are decreasing stockpiles or that they have stopped their production. There is absolutely unequivocal evidence that they are trying to deceive the U.S. But he's a strong leader, certainly, and his people stand up. And, I wish they'd stand up for me that way. I wish I could get production up around this place. Because he's strong and people, he's smart. You don't get to be, you don't get to have a dead uncle and a dead cousin and 14 dead generals if you're not strong, And I'm willing to do that. So there you go. Isabella in our chat room is saying that Patton Oswalt found this tweet for the Commander-in-Chief where he bragged he never falls for scams, and his proof is he walked out of his Ali G interview.
The Commander of Cheese.
Yeah, he which is a slash against dairy, as far as I'm concerned. But there, in reality, I think he walked out of the Ali G interview because he was being insulted, not because he knew it was a joke.
Right.
Yeah. He understood that he was being insulted, but no one has ever.
Episodes are seriously brilliant.
Oh, they're brutal, and I still argue he might have been, depending on his, since they voice over the singing anyways, he might have been a great Freddie Mercury. I'm throwing that out there.
Yeah, that was weird. I think they just sanitized the script more than he wanted, and that's why it got delayed and
right. Yeah,
recast.
That's right. So, anyways, yeah, we'll take a break and we'll take a call on the other side of the break or whatever. I think that'll work because we
hang in there, George.
Yeah, hang in there, George. We'll get you right after the break. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT820.com. Lock that in. We'll be back. Really? Really? My fire alarm's going to test its battery right now during the last quarter of the year? Because is that what was happening? Like everything was running too smoothly? Hold on. Let me go check real quick and make sure that my mom's cooking has not set the house on fire. Give me a second. I'll be right back. Yeah, that's the fire alarm checking its battery. Sorry. Whoops. Oh, I turned off the... Let's do clouds right now.
We'll come back in 60 seconds,
Okay,
Hal.
cool. Really? Really? This is why we can't have nice things. Well, Driftglass, I think you should have a show. Yeah, I'm just on fire, man. Like when my temperature got so hot, it tested the battery on my fire alarm. We'll have to replace that right away.
Now let's get back with Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Welcome back to the show. So it's
Lady B had to run. Because it's always something with Lady B. Her kids in the emergency room.
Oh, yeah.
Some kind of broken arm, something.
Is she okay? I mean, in all seriousness.
Yeah, she was flustered, but she seems okay.
Okay. Well, we love you, Lady B. Drive safely. Stay with us.
Lady B.
And by the way, that sound in the background that might happen every so often is my my fire alarm in my is decided to test its battery because we haven't had any technical difficulties this show. We were literally able to do a live remote. I can talk to you. We were able to take callers. So as soon as Lady B has to, certainly at the end of the show, Lady B has to run out, and my fire alarm in my apartment where I'm doing the show is telling me that it needs a new battery or whatever by beeping. And only one of them, because there's 4 of them in the apartment. There's one in every room. But the one in the room I'm in, which, by the way, I'm for. There's a regulation that made that necessary because too many firemen were getting into buildings and they were finding these things with dead batteries in them, and the people hadn't known that the battery had been dead for a long time. So they had to have a little thing that was added to these fire alarms. That's a regulation. And so every time somebody tells you, we're getting rid of regulations, willy-nilly, we're throwing them out, it's just too much stuff, there are regulations that can deserve to go away. There are ones that can be replaced by more efficient versions of them. A lot of times, reviewing how people do business these days to eliminate, new scientific studies will actually show you that there are there are times, when, chemicals or combinations of chemicals that they thought were more hazardous are actually less hazardous than they thought. All those kind of things you can actually change those things. The Obama administration did a lot of removal of regulations that were bad for business and were unnecessary. There's a difference between that and the Trump administration's desire just to Scott Pruitt their way through the environment, selling off public lands that you can just gut for uranium and leave mercury in the streams. And there is a huge swath of Republicans, for whatever reason, and this is, from the Dave Rubin wing of the right, that, fancies themselves as libertarians, which, by the way, libertarianism is not a political philosophy. It is a personal philosophy externalized by lazy people. Like, I take care of myself. Why can't they take care of themselves? Have you been to the doctor in months? No. All right. So that in and of itself, that aside or whatever, the idea that regulations in and of themselves are bad is one of these talking points like, this bill is so big nobody's read it, even though it's been through committee. It was vetted by 10 different committees per their particular section of it. The language was written by consulting all the committee members on them. Those committee members reported back to their caucuses. The caucuses talked to the overall party. The party, creates internal reports that people can read and report back that these are the strategies that they're using. This is the language that they're using. If anybody has any additional stuff, they can bring it to the committee's attention, yada, yada. That's why stuff should take a long time. But there's a realm of there's an area of Republican thinking, and this is Donald Trump is the natural extension of the Republican Party. Let's be abundantly clear about this. He's not an aberration. He's a feature, not a bug, as John so eloquently put earlier. He is the absolute. You can follow Nixon to Reagan to Bush to Trump perfectly. Like this makes absolute sense in terms of where the Republican thinking is going, the narrowing of their political focus, and the dumbing down of their political systems. This is they have been basically a strategy that over time has created a monster that is of no surprise to anyone. And the support structure in the form of the Paul Ryans and the Mitch McConnells of the world, and not to let them off the hook, the Susan Collins and the Lisa Murkowskis of the world, are specifically designed and kind of funneled in to support exactly this kind of leader. Republicans vote for people to run government who hate government, in the idea that by getting them in there, they will sabotage it, that they will take out all the things that are ruining their lives somehow. And then when that person does that, they realize how much of the government and society's support structure they take for granted, like roads and bridges and water and air, and how much we as a collective society put our energy together to solve financial and effort and problems of human effort that we could not do on our own, no matter how wealthy we were. And yet the Paul Ryans of the world live in this idea that they're going to live out in a hollowed out volcano like Dr. Evil, and or the people in Atlas Shrugged, and separate themselves from as the wheat from the chaff, and stop having to provide all this all these goods and services for all these people who don't deserve it. And this is how they live. This is their this is their operating philosophy. And the voters that support them operate on this idea that the U.S. government is their problem. And unfortunately, they are joined in their disdain of the U.S. government by statistically significant number of lefties who, and they've both glommed onto this idea that the establishment is the problem. When you boil it down to person, they're fine. This is the old voter thing of like, they hate the Republicans or the Democrats, or they hate their party, but their rep is awesome, right? This is that you see that a bunch. Like everybody in the Democratic Party is awesome. Just ask Elizabeth Warren, and like that kind of idea, and so there is now in the United States a significantly strong enough group on both of those sides to sway elections. And that behavior, the government is the problem, and on the right, and Democrats are worse than Republicans on the left, the Jimmy Dore, Lee Camp world, is now at a significant enough spike that when the Russians came in and decided that they were going to push propaganda stuff and they were going to, create their own fake Black Lives Matter accounts and leftist-leaning accounts, seed them with ideas that were bait for lefties that criticized Dems on one side, basically making people demoralize. It was like Operation Demoralize, keep you from voting, lower your desire to engage in your own democracy. Job is done. Convincing someone to vote for the enemy is very difficult. It was possible this time around, but it was very hard to do. The reality, though, is that getting people to not vote at all is really easy. Playing to people's laziness, emotional laziness, is super easy. Let's see. Sorry, I was reading some of the chat, trying to catch up on some of that. We'll talk about that in the post show. But this idea that keeping people from voting, keeping people from engaging, keeping people from registering, voting, operating in primaries, operating in the democratic process, fractioning is a way easier and less expensive and system, and has a way higher ROI. Your return on investment, to get people not to vote, is money well spent. Mm-hmm. And as many the Paul Weyrich quote, which our dear friend Tom Hartman plays every so often, is, as I think, the prime example of what the Republicans have been doing since before Reagan. Here it is. This is, and by the way, this is the guy who founded the organization that is providing Trump with his list.
Many of our Christians have what I call the goo-goo syndrome. Good government. They want everybody to vote. I don't want everybody to vote. Elections are not won by a majority of people. They never have been from the beginning of our country, and they are not now. As a matter of fact, our leverage in the elections, quite candidly, goes up as the voting populace goes down.
I understand that is the guy who founded the Heritage Foundation. He's a member of the Moral Majority, the American Legislative Exchange Council. And these are the people who are providing the list to Donald Trump of who he should have on the Supreme Court.
And he sounds like a 1940s sportscaster.
Well, it's the 80s, so people still, you went to Toastmasters, right? You learned to give speeches, which I recommend, by the way, if anybody's interested. If you're an activist and you're not that great in front of crowds and you want to do that kind of stuff and you don't have time to put in 26 years doing stand-up comedy like I have, and you go, I want to be able to stand up in front of a bunch of people and articulate my thoughts and do it directly and kind of in an entertaining way. There's a National Speakers Alliance and Toastmasters. You can do those kind of things. They still exist, and they're a great investment, especially if you're going to eventually run for office, perhaps, which I think everybody should eventually do in some format. That's what my 65th year is going to be about. I got a plan if we still have a country. But anyways, we got to take. We're done. You guys are awesome. Thank you, Johnny Million. Thank you. I guess did Antonio jump in? Who jumped in when Lady B left?
No, it's me, Mike.
Oh, hey,
Mike's
Mike.
here.
How are you? Sorry.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks so much for sitting in. You guys are awesome. Johnny.
Nothing like Lady B.
Yeah.
It was immediately obvious to me.
Well, it was shocking, I'm sure. Thank you, Johnny Million. You're awesome. Thanks to everybody who listens on the chat room. Don't forget to go to our YouTube page at howsparks.tv. Like and subscribe. We need all the help we can get. We're trying to hit that 10K number, and everybody helps. You don't have to hit the bell if you don't want to, but we recommend that as well. We'll let you know when the show is on. We'll see you next week on the House Parks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Use hashtag HSRPM to talk to us during the break, during the week, and we'll talk to you next week. Cool. So, hi, chat room. Yeah, Lady B got the tie lines fixed. She spent plenty of time doing it. I'm going to sign off. You guys agree? Thank you, Chicago. Bye. Awesome. Let's see. I'm going to go look at our chat room. I like the show also, folks. So, thanks. Let me catch up with everybody chat-wise. You guys were fantastic today. Let me try this. Scroll down here. So, in case I didn't say it, thank you, Billy. I think I might have missed that one as we were going along. Thank you, Hal Vickery and Sandra and Sixes and Bob Kirksey. Thank you so much for the super chat today. That was really great. Yeah, we talked about the Kennedy connection to some degree, but the reality is that this is the norm. This is what happens when people push the quote unquote lesser than two evils argument. To which my answer is, vote against the greater of two evils, and then do something about it. That's honestly, that is the simplest solution in this circumstance. And if you're in a situation where you have any control over, these kinds of become a part of a political party or whatever, and like all these people who are like, I'm going to start a third party and all that kind of stuff, who haven't involved themselves in actual politics, who actually haven't been involved in any major way, either trying to become a Democrat or a Republican or whatever, or even, quite frankly, working as a Green Party candidate or as a member of the party on the board, or going to those, which a lot of people say and haven't ever done, just end up being, they're just barnacles. They're not really helping the process. So, anyways, I mean, that part's driving me nuts this week. So, thanks, Tom. Be well, Charles. See you, Hal Vickery. I take something for this headache and light it. Yeah, go get some rest. Take care of yourself. Drink some water. And thank you. So there's a couple of things I want to let me slide this down. Hold on. A couple of things we didn't really get to, I guess, address this. Well, I guess we kind of touched on each one of these, but the primary one, you can give any ground. This is my political philosophy. If you disagree with me, you're welcome to, but I think it's a mistake. Is if at some point you believe that, the Dems are too corporate, or they have a stranglehold on power, and that they cheated Bernie, and blah, 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 blah. the only real way you're going to better the world while they're while this is the system we have is to vote for Democrats. Period. With the rare exception that you have like a blue dog in your senator or something like that. But the irony is, and this is the part that drives me crazy. Let's say you have a corporate Dem as a congressman who's genuinely bad, who votes against liberal judges or something like that, who's like genuinely horrifying. Let's just say that's the case. That you have that. Most people who complain about the two-party system, and most people who complain about this thing, and I mean this genuinely, and people can say, not me, but yeah, you. If you're telling the truth, yeah, you. Most of those folks won't vote because of that. They'll vote. They'll literally not vote because the two main reasons. One is I don't like who's running. And, so I don't like who's running for president. I don't like who's running for Congress. And I'm not motivated to vote for them. And I have this, thank you, Amos. That's amazing. Because their problem with the Democratic Party or whatever. Or it's going to go blue anyways, so I don't need to do it. Okay, so here's the two essence problems I have with that. The first one is that there are a dozen other races and a dozen other things, and if you hate your corporate congressman, let's say, and you think that they're just, they're as bad as Trump and Kushner Incorporated, and you think that because they didn't vote for a particular amendment that might favor their local constituents and whatever, and you just think that's wrong, or that if that drives you to the point where you're not going to vote at all, then every other liberal or progressive that's on that list that might actually get some attention from you automatically loses. Automatically just gets ditched. And plus, if you go, there's no effort to be put into this particular person because I know everything I need to know about them, or I'm not ready to vote for them, or whatever. Then spend your time either, knocking on doors for, or campaigning for, or just plain voting for, the people who are running for local office. It's amazing how out of the effort of voting for president or midterm, somehow gives people an excuse to walk away from voting for every other office or every other, measure that's put on the ballot, quite frankly. And then they wonder why a lot of the laws you wonder why on the same day that Obama won, that gay marriage lost in the state of California. And it's because a majority of the people, in general, voted for Obama. But the people who are the most left, the most liberal, who were foot stompers, let gay marriage go down in California. So okay, so that's the primary one. Is that the other is mandate. So every time we get to this point where we've got there's a 1 or 2 percentage point difference, and everybody's like, they're going to win anyways, or I'm in a blue state, it already goes that way. What ultimately happens is that the absolute bare bones number of voters show up to make it happen. And then when Republicans or conservatives of any ilk argue for an actual political class, related a bill, an economic bill, a bank regulation, and women's rights, gay rights, any of these things, when people look at the polls, they show an overwhelming support for liberal and progressive ideas. But then when they look at who actually showed up to vote, the margin is so much more narrow. And that, I believe, has to do not with the public not being committed to these ideas in general, but that activist level people intentionally don't vote out of protest or aggravation, or they leave that voting up to other people and say, well, it's going to go blue anyway, so I don't even need to vote. And they lower the mandate. If all the people who said, well, my state's blue anyway, so it's going to go that way, showed up one-to-one as a human being and voted their conscience and made sure that when a Dem gets in, who, and believe me, everything that Hillary was running on is ideologically tested by that election. Whether or not you believe she was honest in it, whether or not you believe that she was the perfect purveyor of it, whether or not you believe that she was going to carry it out, was immaterial to the Republicans, because what they looked at was, that's not just a referendum on Hillary, it's a referendum on every idea that's in the Democratic platform and everything that she was speaking of on the campaign trail. And so when people go, well, my state's going to go blue anyway, so I don't need to vote, what they do is they lower the mandate. If all those people voted, the number of people who support gay marriage, support immigrant rights, and the rights of people seeking asylum, and who wanted to keep families together and want a court that's more egalitarian and truer to the Constitution and is more protective of individual rights and is less corporate and less all those things would have had a mandate this entire time. But we allowed a hair's breadth difference between Gore and Gore and Bush to allow Nader to create a wedge, and we got the Iraq War because of that. Post-Obama, because people were stomping their feet, the Jill Stein and Trump protest votes gave us Donald Trump in office. Period. End of story. And people can say, no, that's not what happened, and it's not that. There's exactly the margin of human beings in the difference in the Electoral College, the things that flipped the Electoral College in the states that actually made a difference for Donald Trump. The number of people who said they voted for Jill Stein, or who didn't vote because they were angry with Hillary or they didn't feel like she represented them, that number of people was exactly the number that would have flipped the state for Hillary. And if you believe that any of this stuff, like it is going on right now, would be going on with HRC in office, you are a maniac. If you think she would be setting up family detention camps and separating children, if you think that she would have raced on television to decry the shooting deaths of white people while ignoring both black victims and black heroes, and you really believe that, you're deluded beyond measure, and you might be beyond hope. So I'm not even sure I'm talking to you. But anybody else, the people I am talking to is anybody in a state where you said at any point in your life, my state goes blue, so therefore I don't need to. You are the mandate. You are the reason. That when Republicans attack an idea and Democrats say, if I get too close to this, I won't get reelected because the voters aren't there with me. When the polls say they are, but the people who showed up to actually vote aren't. And then you blame a Democrat of any sort for hedging on anything so they can stay elected because it's them or a Republican who will gut everything. Look, that's why Bernie Sanders changed his gun vote. So the reality is that as much as people say they're an enemy of incrementalism and that we need revolution, none of them act like that. And the and Bernie Sanders is an incrementalist, or he would not have said what he said this week. In many ways, we won the election. That is the height of incrementalist privilege. And again, if we're going to talk about white privilege, if we're going to talk about the privilege in life, the ability for you to vote for someone who's not going to get elected in a private moment where no one sees you do it. So you're only doing this for bragging rights or your own internal arrogant feeling of superiority. In those moments, if you're able to do that, if you live in a country where you think you're able to vote for someone who isn't actually going to get elected just to make a point, that's privilege. You don't have purple on your finger. You don't have someone picking your opposition. You don't have a gun to your head. You don't have ballots being stuffed against your will. And if you don't vote, you're also the kind of person that allows for, in these narrow margins, if there is any voting machine shenanigans, that margin is so thin that they can argue it didn't happen. What we need as progressives and liberals is overwhelming force. There has to be a blue wave this fall. And that if people want to move the party left and move it more progressive, they do it internally. As if they actually care about the trajectory instead of feeling superior. And I personally believe that the Susan Sarandons and the Jimmy Dores of the world would rather be right than help people. Would rather be able to argue that they feel right about what they're doing than actually have results that benefit the lives of other human beings. Because it's easy. Again, going into a voting booth, and by the way, my belief is they both voted for Trump because they thought they were, in a laughing way, because they thought Hillary was going to win, and they thought they were just going to, like, I'll show her and I'll tell my friends afterward, I really voted for Trump, like that kind of thing. And then when he actually got in, there was a, how the heck did that happen? So I have zero sympathy. I have zero sympathy for people who piss away their vote. And again, if you want a third party and you know that the long road and the hard work of getting a third party exists, you know how hard it is, then do it through actual politicking. Moving the party left from within while getting the best people possible right now. Because this fantasy idea, this 6-minute abs, stomach stapling version of democracy that people are using right now, this idea that, because the Antifa and the Occupy crowd, none of them vote. So, and certainly none of them have any money to donate to a candidate to make flyers or yard signs or buy bottles of water for volunteers or keep a campaign office open or buy television ads. No one in Occupy or any of those groups is able to do that. These kind of NGOs they're the left equivalent of libertarians. They're meaningless to the political discourse because they don't affect it. Except to, in some cases, they motivate the right by thinking that there's tons of monsters out there that on the left that are coming, and they demotivate people on the left because they think the job is done once you've protested. So, and I am not going to be moved on this idea. Not when the Senate is currently 51-49, and they will decide who's going to be the next Supreme Court judge or two, and that person is going to hold up things like the Muslim ban that was done this week, give the kind of ruling against public sector unions like they've done, and especially as the SCOTUS looks at forward to a woman's right to choose. If you're willing to give up those rights to people just to make a political point alone in a box so you can tell your friends, you are the exact same egomaniac that Donald Trump is. So the goal from a Democratic standpoint must be a 70-seat majority in the Senate, a 400-seat majority in the House, the presidency, and a Supreme Court with 12 justices on it that represent the societal and cultural makeup of the United States as a constitutional democracy. People from different ways of life with different emotional experiences who are all coming together under the same Constitution to benefit everybody. Yeah, Blake Light Blues calls it instant oatmeal democracy. I'd call it this microwave democracy that people try to do. You know, and it's gross. I find it disgusting. You know, and it needs to be. That's so funny, yo. This should be my TEDx speech. Yeah. Anybody who's paid attention to politics at all over the past 40 years and still wants to play the both sides game is either a liar, an imbecile, or getting paid to do it. I agree, Drift Glass. Absolutely. The both siderism is literally the cash and carry goal of the Putin regime, because nothing demoralizes and dissolves and keeps people from voting in mass, like this idea that it doesn't matter. And literally that is Jimmy Dore's entire sales point, that there is no difference between the two, that the Dems and the Republicans are the same people. And this is the same thing, by the way, that that Alex Jones used to push up until Trump got in office. And it's what Susan Sarandon pushes as well. And it's wrong. And it's dangerous. And it's detrimental to it. It affects real people's lives. This is the problem I have with it or whatever. Like, one of the biggest problems with the ACA fight is that the Republicans were literally comfortable keeping the status quo, even though people were dying, and that the biggest reason for bankruptcies in the United States was lack of insurance, and people who had pre-existing conditions just having their financial lives gutted by this experience because they couldn't get insurance after a certain point, or they'd literally cap out of their what they could get from their insurance provider because their child was born with spina bifida, or they were an amputee, or they'd suffered a catastrophic injury or cancer at an early age, and their pre-existing condition just ran out of money at some point. And the Republicans' answer to that was, well, that's the price of freedom, that some people are just going to fall under it, but that's why we have the great system we have, and you can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs. It's just some people are going to fall. If we're trying to make something, great, if America's going to be this bastion of freedom, you can't force people to get insurance, and you can't do all that, and that's more important than these people. And so these people, we feel bad for them, and maybe charities can help them, but they got to go. It's too bad. This is the exact same response that I hear hard lefties saying about LGBT rights, a woman's right to choose, these immigrant families, all the damage, the death of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the damage that Scott Pruitt is doing to the EPA. It'll all have been worth it if in the end somehow we get a revolution. That the people who are whose lives are destroyed by this, they're just an unfortunate. They have to go. They have to be damaged by this so we can make our political point, because it's better than it, because things are moving too slow for me, and we just need people to Carrie, we need a civil war. No, we don't. We do not need a civil war. Spoken like someone who's never been in a physical fight. No one needs a civil war. No one needs to take up arms. No. No. You need to vote. You need to vote consistently. The only reason people call for revolution and civil war is because they've abdicated their responsibility as voters too many times in the past. And they're sitting in the seat of the fire that they have allowed to burn, and they're crying, "We need a quick fix." Brett, so my life is worth sacrificing for their revolution. That's exactly right. That is exactly the argument from Sarandon and Dorr. And I don't think it is. Because there, on the one hand, there's no guarantee that it will actually change. And on the other hand, again, a train is not an off-road vehicle. And if you yank it off the tracks, it will just blow up. And that's what we've had repeatedly. That's what people turning on Al Gore, of all people, by the way, that Al Gore, who everybody praises for an inconvenient truth and understanding what a great environmentalist he is, and he's such a great post-politician, but he was a little too wooden for me, and I don't know, and maybe we need a change, and the guy you'd rather have a beer with, this 90s nihilistic, lamentable, lazy idea that we can just let it pass was exactly the kind, or that screw Bill Clinton, so I'm not going to vote for Al Gore, so Ralph Nader. Both those thoughts gave us the Iraq War. Because we can debate whether 9/11 would have happened at all, because I believe Al Gore would have read his presidential daily briefs. I believe he would have taken the threat of al-Qaeda seriously, and I don't think that could have happened except with a White House that was flippantly disregarding all those warnings. Carrie, respectfully, that's ridiculous too. We got protest votes gave us George W. Bush twice, and they gave us Donald Trump. Carrie, the economy is not going to shut down. It will collapse under the weight of people mismanaging it. But the idea that you want trucks to not be able to run and people not to be able to be fed, why aren't we in the streets every day? Because people have jobs and have to pay their rent. That's why. This is an incremental thing. And you're not going to solve it through it. And it wasn't an instant problem. It won't have an instant solution. Kerry would have made a fine president. I completely agree. As would Hillary Clinton. And none of this stuff that we're watching would have happened under her watch. And a Democratic caucus under her would have pushed back on anything that they thought was, a neocon-like behavior that people thought she was going to have. But again, telling yourself that repeatedly, that somehow she would have been worse, is exactly why we have Donald Trump. And the stuff that he's doing, if you can say to yourself in your thought that somehow it would be worse, you're a liar. You're just wrong. And your dismissive cruelty about the damage that Trump does is more indicative of your lack of character than anything else. Period. And this is not the same thing as having an argument about whether or not a two-party system is enough and we need three parties or any singular political issue. It's simply a lack of character. By the same token, Bernie, yes, that guy would have also been better than Trump. Yeah, he would have, but he lost the primary. And I don't want to hear that he was cheated out of it because he wasn't a Democrat, and he's still not a Democrat. Get your own party. Either join the Democrats and be the most liberal Democrat in the Senate, or stop using the Democratic Party as a super PAC and pretending you don't have one. It's disingenuous. It's Machiavellian. Everybody running for president is Machiavellian to some degree. They have to. But this idea that Bernie would come in the day that Kennedy is stepping down and say that in many ways we won because the Democrats eventually got to Medicare for all, which we were headed towards after the ACA anyways, which was in part of the plan for the ACA, is I think patently offensive. We need total engagement in the political process, nonviolent. I completely agree. Went for canvassing in Hillary in Iowa, and I didn't feel good about her chances. That after that day, the people there didn't get why voting was important. This is why I'm constantly hearing I want to do something radical. Yeah, but it doesn't work that way, Carrie. This is okay. Democracy is an exercise plan. It's nutrition. It is not surgery. Very seldom do we come upon a situation, and Nixon and Trump are great examples of surgical necessity, that at a certain point you need a bypass. You need to remove some cancer through direct action. But the rest of the time, it takes constant daily effort. And most people just are too lazy to do it a lot of times, especially on the left, because we get emotionally weighed down. If I hear one more person go, I can't, I'm emotionally exhausted from all this, blah, blah, blah. Shut up. Literally, if you're exhausted by the news, if you're worn out by it, keep it to yourself. I don't need to hear it. Neither does anybody else. It doesn't benefit anybody else. That part of sharing has no value. That's right. Bill Clinton said, "Push the rocks up the hill." It is the tragedy of Sisyphus, but it is the requirement of a democracy. You have to be a constant gardener. There's a Chinese phrase about sitting by a stump and waiting for a rabbit, which is somebody stupid who does like that, waiting for a lucky break or an instant solution to something. Because this guy went out to hunt rabbits and he needed to do one. One was a bunch of them were running from a fox, and one of them ran into a stump and killed itself. And he just picked it up and carried it home, and he couldn't believe his luck. He got a free rabbit, and so instead of going hunting again next time, he went back and sat by the stump every day waiting for another rabbit to run into it. You can be emotionally exhausted, but that should never stop you from voting or bringing 5 others with you. Exactly. And again, them weeds is winning, Hal. At times, yeah, Citizens United need to go. But which candidate got elected? Was it the one who said she wanted to undo Citizens United? Was it the one who actually Citizens United was actually about the movie made about her? No. She won the popular vote, and in states where he won the electoral college, the difference between in voters was exactly the Jill Stein protest vote number, and yeah, Tom, no. Yeah, and again, Can I just on a moment on punching Nazis, shall we? No. No physical violence, not now, not ever. If there's a war, you have permission. But any other circumstance, you do not. Anyone can defend themselves. No one starts anything. And there's two reasons for this. One is we live in a participatory democracy. We have remedies. We have legal remedies. We live in a first world country. Act like it. Secondly, the first time you do it, and it feels good that you can punch a Nazi in the head, the next time they're all carrying. And if they get struck, they can shoot you. Because they're outnumbered and they feared for their lives. And it's only a matter of time before somebody gets killed. So, Heather Heyer getting run over. But that's just the beginning of it. You do not ever. You can defensively, you can hold a line with a banner. If they're going to, that's nonviolent civil disobedience has value simply because of its nonviolence. Not once, not ever, not ever. No. No punching Nazis. No, no spitting in cops' faces. No physical touching of anybody you disagree with. And certainly if cops are, being forced to, come down and hold a line, and they're in riot gear, and you can basically decide that because you can't see their face or they're in riot gear that they're all the same, or their motivations are all the same, or they're not just there because they're assigned to do it, or that they're part of some sort of Gestapo movement, then how are you different than G. Gordon Liddy and his how to kill a jackbooted thug comments? No, not ever. Civil disobedience, articulate argument, vote, and run for office. Become a part of if the party is not left enough for you, be involved and push it that way with intelligence and skill and grace and humor and as much artful involvement as you possibly can. But this idea that there's going to be a quick fix to any of this, just forget it. C.T. Fletcher, who many of you know, I'm a big fan of. I love that guy. He's a sweetheart. He's got a new sweetheart. He was a power lifter, and then he became a bodybuilder, and he opened this Iron Addicts gym, and he's a very motivated and motivational guy. He had before he started, he went from being a power lifter who ate a bunch of garbage. He had a major heart attack. He had to sit up. He realized he had to keep his body in better shape, but he got a heart valve, and they put that valve in, and even with that heart valve, he became just physically massive and all this, and worked out, and motivated a lot of people to get physically fit, and he needed a heart transplant, and he's gotten one just recently, and he's back on his feet, and he's it's been 6 weeks, and he's moving around, and he's doing sit-ups and jogging and all this stuff, and he's a vet. He's just a crazy dude. I love him. But there are times for that emergency surgery. That's a window of this much time in his life. And then the rest of what he has to do about this is eat right, take supplements, and in some in this case his anti-rejection meds, I'm sure, are part of this, and exercise regularly. And that's day to day. Being a minority community is not fun ever. That's not true. That's simply not true. I can't even believe you believe that. As a matter of cosmic history, it has always been much easier to destroy than create. Spock, Star Trek 2. This is true. My civil rights are under attack, and that's one of the reasons why I ended up in the hospital, because I thought I was having a heart attack when I was having an anxiety attack. Yeah, I know. But part of it is because, and understand that you can manage that as an anxiety attack. You can imagine, you can manage those emotions, and you have a responsibility to, if you care about the people that you are motivated to help. If you're getting, if anxiety is affecting you, and I've had it in the past, I've talked about when I've experienced it, what I did to deal with it, and there are management structures you can do, but it will never work. You will never be able to deal with it unless you figure out why you're doing it. And if you start to care about other people more than your own emotional impact, what you think other people are feeling, or what you think, or what you're feeling yourself, which is usually what people do. But when you get anxiety, most people, you are, especially when you're doing it on a cause level, you're projecting your emotional response onto other people, and you're multiplying it by by tens of thousands. And you have to shift that to go, just because I'm feeling this doesn't mean they're feeling this, and what I feel might not even be right. In the arc of emotions, depression and anxiety are below anger. Anger is a much healthier emotion to be in, and it is on the road to joy. You can't skip from depression to happiness without going through some level of anger, but you got to own it. Jude, then you didn't punch a Nazi. You defended yourself. That's not the same thing. Yeah. If we'd elected Hillary, we'd be pushing her on the minimum wage from 12 to 15. Instead, we're trying to save the Republic from Nazis. No equivocation. Exactly. And, and Hillary is on the 15 where Obama was on gay marriage. They both are for them. They are both for that, but they know the full electorate isn't there yet and will take time to get there. So the process of being president is an act of leadership. You're not a signpost. The Republicans govern in large part by having their leaders be signposts. That's not leadership. Well, Kerry, we're not going to back you up on calls for civil war. That's not the same thing. We're saying what you do. And we're saying manage what you're going through in a way that will eventually help people. If Hillary had been elected, Trump would still be out there declaring he was cheated. Yeah, but he wouldn't have the ability to direct ICE to break up families. And his followers would just be a bifurcation of the Fox News crowd. They would be torn between watching Fox News and his stupid Facebook television network, as it should have been. Managed it since then, but people telling me my fears are unfounded is not cool. Carrie, no one is telling you your fears are unfounded. We're just telling you that tactically there's a better way to handle it. That emotional direction is very important. That you are in command of your emotions. Everybody is. You make a decision about your emotional response before stuff happens. And everyone is like this. If you decide that someone saying something to you will make you feel insulted, then when they say it, you will feel insulted. If you decide beforehand that whatever that person says to you isn't going to change a thing about how you feel about yourself, no matter what they say, they won't be able to do anything to you. You have to make those decisions beforehand. And that will help with anxiety. That will help with depression in a lot of ways. People, you have to make up your mind about what certain things, inevitable things especially, what inevitable things mean before they happen. Because you're going to have political losses. You're going to have social losses. Friends are going to come and go. People are going to live and die. Circumstances are going to... And you have to decide to some degree what kind of person you're going to be when those things occur, especially if you're the kind of person, and I believe you are, Carrie, and I think everybody else in the chat room is the same way, that you want your life to have some meaning and further the rights and and benefits of people who you feel are disenfranchised. If you believe that, you have to understand you're on the cutting edge of life on Earth, because this is a relatively new thing. You know, our system of democracy is only a couple hundred years old. It's on shaky footing right now, but that's because it's being tested in a way it hasn't been tested heretofore, because it's new in the scope of humanity. And so, of course, if you're on the cutting edge of bettering people's lives, or making sure that the underprivileged or the people who have been disenfranchised are being, you know, have a shot, of course you're going to be encountering more opposition than everybody else, than people who don't care about that, who just zip along and, you know, their biggest concern is whether their football team or their NASCAR wins. That's what I'm talking about. So that's what I'm talking about. And I do believe that this yeah, okay, you want, yeah. Aw, Lady B, one of her twins broke his arm at his job. Oh, kiddo. Oh, well, So, again, I'm not saying people. One of Lady B's twins, her son broke his arm. Yeah. My dad was the one who got me interested in current events and history. That's great. So slowly died of congestive heart failure, and seeing his intellect taken of dementia is heartbreaking. Yeah, I'm really sorry to hear that, Carrie. It's super important, though, that, you know, these things are going to have to. You will have your own emotional reaction. Your life will arc and ebb and flow. Like everyone's does. But you can make a difference in other people's lives by sitting with yourself and deciding, when these kind of things happen, how can I be the most useful? How can I be the most helpful? I mean, that's if there's a single biggest reason for me to that I work out and exercise regularly and take care of myself, is that in circumstances where there may be an emergency, and I live in an earthquake zone, I grew up around flooding areas, there are wildfires here, I have a child, I have relatives that rely on me, I have and friends as well, that in a circumstance, if something goes down, I want to be helpful. I want to be an addition, not a subtraction. So that's why I work out the way I do. You know, that's super important. Oh, wait, Fester's leaving? Oh, please take care and have a safe 4th. A nicer. Be well, Fester. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. We'll see you next week, okay? Bye. They just put a workout room in my building, and I'm heading down there this week to work out. Well, that's great. How you have a mom that cooks grilled cheese for you. She doesn't cook grilled cheese for me. She cooks them for my son sometimes. Well, thanks, Tom. I appreciate that. I just think it's, you know, again, if you're if you're going to be a progressive and a liberal and a Democrat, then your goal. Hi, Michael. 3. I have 3. If you're going to, it's really about being an addition on the earth, not a subtraction. I am Carl, but I'm lacto-ovo-vegetarian when I'm with Camden. So when I have my son with me, I'm lacto-ovo-vegetarian. When he's with his mom, I'm vegan. Because he's not, and so I prepare things for him, and I will sometimes to get him to eat, or will, I just broaden my diet around him. So there you go. Seriously, these robocalls are coming up as Apple and Korea. I don't know how to make them stop. You can block them in your iPhone when the number comes up or whatever, but they're fake. So, but the point is, Cam looks like a grilled cheese guy. He's totally a grilled cheese guy, Amos. Absolutely. Well spotted, my friend. Bob Craig, I like you how I eat no sugar nor anything that converts to it. Exercise hard daily. I'm 67 years old. I haven't had cold since 2004. I do this because I feel great and others can learn from it. That's awesome. Vegan choices are getting incredible. Soon you won't be able to tell the difference in cheese. That's true. How they are coming from my home phone. Oh. Then you have to do it on whatever your phone service is. But just understand they're fake. You have to do it from the website of your whoever does your phone service. You can block them there. It'll have a list of calls you've gotten, and you can do that. It should be, anyways. But point being is you want to be the most useful human being you can be in all the circumstances you find yourself in. Okay, sorry, Brad. I was looking for that when I got carried away with the the motivational talk this week. Hold on, there was a story that I had brought up. Let's see. Hold on, I'll find. Remember that kid who was mowing yards for his neighbors, and some people called the cops on him? This 12-year-old black kid. He apparently his business is huge now, and his prices. People are let's see. Let's see. I'll find out exactly how much. Reginald Fields. He's from Maple Heights, Ohio. He got 1,500 shares worth it, and he's received a ton of new clients because of it. Let's see, I'll find another one. And there's a lot of it, actually. Bill Gates donated $4 million this week to create mosquitoes that kill each other. How about that? Literally, they're trying to create this version of mosquitoes that were there's an abundance of mosquitoes in a certain area. They'll release them, and then the mosquitoes kill each other off. So, just fighter ones, which, eventually, of course, they'll be the size of a car, and they'll come for us. I don't want to be too Ray Harryhausen. Toys R Us is shutting down. So, a mystery person bought $1 million of their leftover toys and is giving them away to underprivileged kids. That's pretty cool. Mosquitoes are a life form that has no redeeming value. You tell that to the little birds that eat them. Yeah, and bats. I mean, they're overpopulated. There's too many of them, so it won't wipe them out. Even if they do create a version of them, they won't be like, Terminator mosquitoes. The other ones will still have a fighting chance. But yeah. Let's see. A group of volunteers went down to a beach in India and cleaned up 12,000 tons of garbage. How about that? Amos, the kid, was cutting grass on the neighbor's yard as well. So the people who called the cops on him is basically like a nasty old guy on the block. It wasn't that they were driving by and saw a black kid cutting grass and called the cops on him. It was the guy, he was overlapping onto their lawn. And so that's the person that called him. So it wasn't kind of this like drive-by racism that it was purported to be. The guy in the house could have been, but it wasn't like the whole neighborhood was full of racists. It was the jerk on the block. But the kid was cutting the grass on that guy's lawn as well. He was like overlapping, and the kid didn't know, and so he called the cops on him. Whatever. It's pathetic and disgusting, but it's not like it's a neighborhood where people are driving around going, "Oh my goodness, how did that get a tool that large? That's just, he must have stolen that," that kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I think there's some decent there. There's a lot of invention stuff going on, and the world of renewable energy is just steaming ahead, full speed right now. So I want $1 million like now. Yeah, you're gonna need it. Mosquitoes do not affect the food chain; they can be killed off with no problem. Well, thanks, Brad. That sounds like good news. Yeah. Well, guys, go take a nap. Take care of yourselves. Do a little self-care. If you can go to the march, please do. This kind of turned into a little bit of a post-show pep talk, but I really, honestly, take that time to decide. It doesn't have to be today, but at some point, go, okay, if stuff goes down, real stuff right now. So if there's an emergency, and do I know CPR? Do I know do I have the physical strength to carry someone? If I can't, what are my other uses in this circumstance? How can I be a better person in those kind of circumstances when they happen? And then think a little bit about the kind of life stuff we all don't get to dodge, and go, I know I'm going to be feeling these things. I know I'm going to be brokenhearted or hurt at these times, but how can I be more valuable in that moment to everyone around me and to myself? You'll find that takes a lot of the fear away, because you become you become a guided missile towards the better parts of life. So, yeah. I have your other green raptor, Mr. Man. I'll be right out. Camden's looking for one of his dinosaurs. So I'm gonna go be dad. So you guys take care of yourselves. Thank you so much for tuning in. You guys are awesome. I know this is a tough week, so I appreciate you guys hanging on and going for it. And we'll just keep at it. This is not something that gets solved all at once. So big hugs all around, especially to you, Carrie. All's well. One foot in front of the other, deep breaths, breathe into your gut, So and everybody try yoga. Do a little more yoga this week. You'll be all right. Thank you guys so much. I'll talk to you later.